What's up, everybody? Welcome to The Sweat. I'm your host, Jesse Cofield. Lots to get to on today's show, but let's start in the NBA. So the Pelicans getting the road win against the top-seeded Suns last night. Huge game for Brandon Ingram. 37 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists. That's good for 69.25 DK fantasy points. And the series is now even at 1. And if the series being tied didn't tell you that we might have a series, Devin Booker left the game in the third quarter with a hamstring injury. His status for the next game is unknown. So let's bring in DraftKings contributors Matt Mazelman and DK Nation's Chinmay Veda. So Matt, with Booker potentially out, like how does that affect the series? Also, that was hysterical when he dapped up that baby.
Yeah, maybe that's the only takeaway that matters is the baby and Devin Booker and their new budding relationship. Mm-hmm. But I think that I may have a different take on Devin Booker than most basketball fans who assume that the Suns can't win without this guy. I remember last year, the Suns had plenty of games where both Booker and Paul, specifically Paul in the playoffs, and then this year where both of them have been out, the Suns don't really miss that much when only one of their two guards are out. Yeah, if both were out, it'd be a problem. But the Suns have so many players who can do similar things that I think they get by the Pelicans regardless. I don't think they need Booker to win this series. And I think that they still would be favored against the Jazz or the Mavericks next round without him. So as long as they can get Booker back at some point, I'm not really worried. It's a hamstring issue. Maybe it could linger, but as long as it's not super long-term, I don't actually think it's that big of a problem.
Chinmay, are you in the same boat? Like, you're not that worried about this?
I do agree a little bit. I do think Booker is still the best player on the Suns, and I do think they will have some trouble with the Pelicans if he is out for the rest of the series. But you look at how the path sets up, both the Jazz and the Mavericks are dealing with their own issues, and we don't really know who's going to come out of that series. So the Suns are still the best team on that side of the playoff bracket. Now, if Booker was out for the rest of the playoffs, then it would be a bigger issue going into what we think would be the conference finals against one of those teams, either the Warriors or the Grizzlies or the Timberwolves. So I think that for now, it's not an issue. If it was a long-term thing, it would be more of a problem. I do think the Pelicans are going to give the Suns a longer series than maybe a lot of people expected, especially if Booker does sit out for this series.
All right, guys, good stuff. Now let's get to tonight's big games in the Eastern Conference. We've got 3 playoff games. The Boston crowd not available in DFS contests, unfortunately, but Kyrie Irving is. So who's your favorite DFS play tonight for game 2 of Nets Celtics? What do you think, Chinmay?
There's a lot of stars on display in this game, a lot of players that you can pay up for, but I really like Al Horford. He's at about 6,500 right now on DK, and he had 45.8 fantasy points in that first game. He's going to get a lot of run with Robert Williams still out for the Celtics, and Horford's that veteran presence that contributes in every stat column. And he showed why he is still considered one of the better front court players in this league, even at his advanced age. So I like Al Horford as a guy who you can maybe save some cash on and still get decent production from.
All right, what do you think, Matt? You could pay $9,900 for Kyrie here.
Yeah, I actually don't think anyone's really going to do it. So first of all, I just did a double take looking at that Al Horford box score again. He played over 40 minutes. That basically never happens. But as Chinmay said, they need it without Robert Williams. So this is a weird slate where I think there aren't value plays or there aren't cheap ones anyway. And therefore, no one's building stars and scrubs. You're going to see tons and tons of mid-range guys. So I want to stay away from Marcus Smart. I feel like Al Horford's a good answer, but the other way to go about this is to actually play a now contrarian, despite his amazing game, Kyrie Irving or Jason Tatum. So those are my 2 answers. I think you can play the studs on both sides of this game, play either Irving or Durant, play Jason Tatum, because the way I'm going to answer this next game after this, I think will set up where, maybe you can pay up in spots people aren't doing it and then pay down in other spots where people aren't doing it. Because I think that expensive players are going to come from some of these other games and not so much from Celtics Nets.
All right, take us to the sports book here, Matt. What's your favorite bet for Brooklyn, Boston?
Yeah, I'll just keep riding the homer train. I can't make any other pick than Celtics, but the reason that I like the Celtics is not because I'm a Celtics fan. The reason I like the Celtics and I'm wearing this hat is because there's betting value. Like, I've become a fan as a result of them being undervalued in the betting markets. That's actually what's happened, because I'm from New Jersey. I'm not from Boston. I should be a Nets or Knicks fan. But now I'm a Celtics fan, and the reason it's just this team is not getting enough credit still. And in this specific game, I think it's because the Nets almost pulled off game one. And there's this idea that if just one shot went differently, they could have won that one. In game two, they'll come back and they'll care even more. But 3.5 is just too low of a line. Like, the Celtics are 3 or 4 points better than the Nets, and they should be favored by about 6 or 7. So I just think this line is still off. I think the Celtics are the much better team. I think they're able to win this game more easily than they won game one.
All right, Chinmay, what about you? Where are you going for this Brooklyn-Boston bet?
I'm actually going in the exact opposite direction. I like the Nets straight up in this game. I think Kevin Durant had arguably one of his worst playoff games of his career in that first game, and it was the turnovers that were really the problem. I think he cuts down on those. Boston has kind of understood that there's no way they can stop both Durant and Irving, and I think they're going to target KD more, but it's up to him to make the adjustment now. And I think in this game he does, especially after a bad game that he had relative to his standards. I still think they get enough from Kyrie Irving, and some of the peripheral players will need to step up. And that's definitely what KD, Kyrie, and head coach Steve Nash have told these guys, that, hey, we have 2 superstars, but we're going to need some other guys to contribute. They have those players. Now it's a matter of whether they'll step up or not. I actually like the Nets straight up in this game. You get some value on that with plus money odds right now. I believe it's at plus 140. So I'll take Durant and Irving in this one as well to get it done. It was a close game in game one, and I think Durant plays better this time around, much better.
All right, let's move to that 76ers Raptors game. What's your favorite DFS play for this one, Chinmay?
I have 2, both of them under 7K. They both have played extremely well through the first 2 games. Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris. You can't go wrong with either one. There's a lot of attention on Joel Embiid and James Harden, but I think that Maxey and Harris are the plays here where they're not exactly value plays. They're still kind of expensive, but you can get away with it's more of a mid-range play than a superstar price point for these guys. So I like both those players to continue having good series against Toronto.
All right, Matt, is this the spot where you're going to pay up for the Stars?
Sort of, but well, I think Embiid and Siakam are pretty good plays, but the guy I'm most interested in here, I think, is a player that people would have liked had he not had the worst game of his life last time out, and that's Gary Trent Jr., who we just found out is going to be available. He was listed questionable up until about 5 minutes ago. He'll be out there tonight, but he scored 0 points in game 2. The reason I like him is not because I think he has to do well now. It's more the pricing, where Al Horford and Marcus Smart, my guess is those are the top 2 most popular players on the whole slate. And Gary Trent is just below them in terms of price. And with recent performance going so much towards those Celtics guys, and it going so much against Trent, like he put up 0 points and 4 fouls in like 9 minutes. It was as bad as possible. And he might still be a little sick and not over the illness he was dealing with, but he also is a very, very high upside player where if he makes his threes, you could get a ton of fantasy points really quickly. So I like Trent as the pivot off those Celtics guys.
All right, Philly, Toronto. What's your favorite bet in this one, Matt? 76ers favored by 2.
So this will be a shorter answer because I sort of just gave away where I'm leaning here, but I think the Raptors can bounce back. A healthy Gary Trent will be a big difference over. I mean, it was like he was losing the game for them. He just had no business being out there for game 2. And it was a massive detriment just to have Gary Trent not playing well. It was only 9 minutes, but it went about as bad as possible for those 9 minutes. And I just think like going into Toronto is going to create a larger home court advantage than you normally get with the travel into another country. They're down 2-0. It's a must-win game. The Raptors probably still feel like they can get back in this series. And then Matisse Thybulle not being able to play just gives them that little extra edge. So I actually think Toronto wins this game. They're about plus 110 right now to win it. All
right, Chinmay, where are you going?
I do think the Raptors will play much better than they did in the first 2 games for all the reasons that Matt mentioned. But I'm still taking 76ers -2. I still think they're the better team. They've played better overall in this series. And Thybulle being out is a problem for the 76ers, but he hasn't really played that much in the first 2 games. And they've gotten offensive contributions anyway without Matisse Thybulle. So we'll see if that defensive, the defensive side is a problem for the 76ers with Thybulle out. But I don't know how much of an impact Trent Jr. will have coming back. He had a horrendous game, and he shouldn't have been out there in game 2. But we'll see how much he can bounce back. I still like the 76ers in this game. They will be in for more of a fight than in the first two games. I do think Toronto will play much better and it will be a closer game, but give me the 76ers against the spread still. They're still the better team, and I still think they get the job done here in game 3.
All right, Chinmay, let's talk about this Bulls-Bucks game. Who do you think is the best DFS play in this one? Giannis going to cost you $10,900. He had 55 DK fantasy points his last time out.
I think you have to go for Giannis in this one. And even though the price point is really high, he absolutely dominated the Bulls for basically the first half of that game before everybody started missing shots on both sides of the ball. So I think Giannis has another big game here. I think Budenholzer plays him more in this game after only having, I think, about 33 or 34 minutes in the first game. I think he plays Giannis more in this game. And I think he tells him to be more aggressive, especially if the Bucks aren't hitting perimeter shots like they weren't doing in game 1. So I like the Greek Freak here. And even though it's a high price point, I think there's enough mid-tier options across the slate elsewhere where you can pay up here for the guy who's going to create a big matchup problem for the Bulls.
All right, Matt, what's your strategy?
In theory, I totally agree. The problem for me is I don't think this game has that much of a chance to stay close. And I think Giannis will play really, really well. And I think the Bucks, unlike in game 1 where they seemed to forget they were in a playoff game at the start of the second half, I think this one they actually finish the job and go up 20 or so points in the second half. Maybe Giannis plays a ton of first half minutes and even third quarter minutes, and he may have a huge fantasy game up to that point. But I think we see some of the Bucks backups in this game in the fourth quarter, honestly. And the guy I like the most for that situation is Bobby Portis at 5,500. He's really the first man in for either Giannis or Lopez. And I think he does play the majority of garbage time unless the team's up 40 points or something. I think he would get extra run if the Bucks were up anywhere in that 15 to 25 range at the end of the game. So if you are trying to fade mid-range chalky players in other games like Marcus Smart and Al Horford, specifically Smart, I think he's the one everyone's going towards. Portis is a pretty similar price, and I think he makes for a pretty good pivot.
All right, let's get your best bet for this one. Matt, you said you didn't think it had a chance to stay close here, so maybe you like the Bucks to cover that 10-point spread?
Yeah, I'll be consistent. It would be very strange if I came back from that commentary and said I like the Bulls to cover plus 10. No, I'll take Bucks minus 10. I think they're just way better, and I think they should have covered last game, and they sort of just fell apart and still managed to win by, I think it was 6 or 7 points. This game, I don't think it'll be as close, and they probably win by somewhere between 12 and, 20 points.
All right, Chinmay, where are you going with your best bet?
I like the total here. I'm going over 225. And I think it's because both teams cannot possibly shoot worse than they did in game 1, especially the Bulls. And the fact that that game managed to stay close was a miracle in and of itself. I think both teams will shoot the ball better, play better offensively, and push this number over. I believe the total has gone over in 3 of the 4 regular season meetings, at least over this line, in 3 of the 4 regular season meetings. So I like it to go over again here. If this line drops a little bit, I think you're in an even better spot. So give me the over 225. I think both teams bounce back from a bad game 1 performance offensively.
All right, good stuff, guys. Can't wait to see what happens. This week, our analysts are breaking down NFL team needs before the upcoming draft in Vegas. Each day, we're going to focus on 2 divisions, deliver a team-by-team breakdown of what positions they're going to be looking for come next Thursday. So we continue our series today. We got Julian Edlow taking a look at the AFC East division.
What's going on, guys? Julian Edlow here for DraftKings, and we're going to run through some of the draft needs in the AFC East here. Let's start with the division champs, the Buffalo Bills. They went 11-6 last season. The Bills are going to be picking at number 25 overall in this draft. They're in a really good shape because, as we know, this team, threatened for the Super Bowl, and they have good players at every position. So I think running back is maybe a position of need, but the Bills don't run the ball that much. I don't think they'll take him in the first round. So the Bills can go best player available kind of throughout the draft and get their running back along the way. Let's look at the Miami Dolphins here. The Dolphins finished at 9-8 last season. Miami's work is pretty much done, to be honest. They had 3 first-round picks last year, and they moved their picks, obviously, this year to bring in Tyreek Hill. So Tyreek Hill immediately fills that need, goes alongside Jalen Waddle, playing with Tua there in Miami. The Dolphins don't pick till the 3rd round. They're bringing back all starters on defense. They've shored up the offensive line, so the Dolphins are picking late, and they can just go best player available pretty much all along the way here. The Patriots, they finished 10-7 last season, but they probably have the most needs in the division. Wide receiver is certainly a position of need after whiffing on N'Keal Harry a couple of drafts back. They had added Devontae Parker on the outside, though, so maybe somebody to play in the slot. And then defense, really all levels of the defense for the New England Patriots are now in need, particularly some speed in that secondary and at linebacker. And finally, the Jets finished at 4-13. They have 2 top 10 picks. They are picking at 4 and 10 overall, and they want to help Zach Wilson. So look for a wide receiver to go with one of those picks for sure, and then potentially some protection for Wilson as well before looking to go to defense later on in the draft.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Sweat. I'm Jesse Cofield. I'm joined now by our MLB panel, DraftKings contributors Nick Fryer and Gary and Thorne. Fellas, it is MLB batting practice time, so getting your favorite DFS and sportsbook plays for tonight. Let's start, Gary, with your favorite pitcher to play in DFS. Who's it going to be?
Yeah, I think you can't really go wrong using either of the starters in this San Francisco-New York game. I'm going to lean Chris Bassett just because I think – first and foremost, he's got the better matchup. And I also think that Rodon, just with how dominant he's been through his first 2 starts, racking up those strikeouts, he's probably going to be the most popular pitcher on this slate. So I do like getting a little bit of that variance, even though I do think Bassett's going to be, relatively popular as well. He's pitched 12 innings so far this season, has 14 strikeouts, just 1 earned run allowed. But I think the thing that I really like about this matchup is the Giants have been pretty strikeout prone so far in 2022. They have the 7th highest team strikeout rate in baseball at 25.5%. They have the highest called strike plus swinging strike rate in baseball at 31.1%. So I think Bassett can really rack up the strikeouts, and I think he's just a pretty good pitcher in general. So I'll take him on this side of a pretty good matchup.
All right, Nick, who are you taking?
I think Bassett's a good call. I do like Rodon a little bit more in that one, but yeah, he is the highest price guy in this on this slate tonight. To me, I wanted to go a little bit lower. This is kind of a weird slate in terms of pricing because I see Meryl Kelly at 8K, and this is a guy who I normally like to target. Got to admit, he has done well this season, but I'm going to go a little bit higher than him at 8.3K on the other side of that matchup with Eric Fetty. Not a guy I normally want to roll with, but he has done well to start the season going up against the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks not good against right-handed pitching. They're bottom 6 in OPS and WOBA against righties, and they have a 135 ISO, which isn't the worst in the league, but it's a really bad number. And they also have the highest K rate against right-handed pitching in all of baseball at 29%. Fetty's got 5 and 6 Ks, 5 innings, both of his first 2 starts of the season. So I think there's a chance for him to kind of go a little bit higher than that in this one.
All right, Nick, who's a hitter that you feel like you need in your lineup? If you move down a little bit, you could get Vladdy Jr. for 5,800.
Yeah, and there were some guys at shortstop that I was looking at tonight because you guys know I like to go with the matchups and look at that history. Bo Bichette has done really well against Nick Pavetta. Francisco Lindor has actually done really well against Carlos Rodon. But the guy I actually want to go with has nothing to do with his matchup really in terms of history. Carlos Correa, 4.9K going up against the Royals. He's gained a little bit of momentum recently, and of course he's a much cheaper option than Lindor was at 5.9, and I believe Bichette's at 5.5. But three for his last 7. And then Correa, he hasn't seen a whole lot of left-handed pitching this season, but he's done well in those opportunities, got a couple doubles. He's going up against Daniel Lynch tonight. Now, he has seen him before. He is 2 for 6 against him. Not going to read too much into that, especially when neither of those hits are for extra bases. But Daniel Lynch is the lowest price guy on this slate, and he struggled mightily in his first start of the season. I think the Twins are a team that you're going to want to stack tonight. And so this is a right mix for a big night for Correa.
All right, Gary, and which hitter do you need in your lineup?
Yeah, I think Correa actually probably dollar for dollar is my favorite play on this slate. But I think we'll get back to how you can attack the Twins in some much cheaper ways tonight. And because of that, I feel okay just saying you can get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. into a lineup tonight. He's $5,800 as you talked about, but he's really picked up right where he left off last season. He's got a 390 isolated power, a 206 WRC plus. And I think the big thing with the matchup tonight is Nick Pavetta, while he has been all right since becoming a Red Sox, he has particularly struggled at Fenway Park. If you go back to the start of last season, he's got a 5.73 ERA when he starts in Boston, and that includes giving up 2.2 home runs per 9. those are not the kind of numbers you want to have going up against Vladimir Guerrero Jr., someone who hit 5 home runs at Fenway in his 10 games last season. So I'll just say the easy answer and take Vladdy.
All right, let's talk value play. Gary, you kind of hinted at this. Are you going to stack the Twins here?
Yeah, and the pricing for the Twins is absolutely insane. I get that some of these guys aren't like household names, although a couple of them used to be Yankees. Like I think Gary Sanchez at 2,800 is really enticing. And the other guy in that trade, Gio Urshela, is $2,200. That doesn't make any sense. First and foremost, Urshela has always hit left-handed pitching well for his career. And Daniel Lynch is a bad left-handed pitcher. He's faced 300 right-handed batters for his career, and he's allowed those 300 to hit 318 with a 392 WOBA. Urshela has hit third in the Twins lineup the last 2 times they faced a lefty. Like, I've never seen someone who's definitely going to hit in the top third of someone's order, has been hitting well so far this season, be priced this low. I mean, it's basically the minimum. So I think Urshela is like a free space tonight.
All right, Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, Gio Urshela was my guy too at 2.2K. Daniel Lynch, you got to pick on him tonight. I do think, just to add to another guy, Gary talked about Gary Sanchez a little bit in that 2.8K. He had a couple doubles in his last game, and it's been a little while since he hit a home run. And this is a guy, whenever I'm going up against left-handed pitching, that I think you got to consider, especially at this price point. But yeah, Gio Urshela is the number one guy when we're talking about value plays tonight. Got a little bit of momentum, 6 for his last 13 over the last 3 games. And he hasn't seen much in terms of left-handed pitching to start the year, but his lone extra base hit has come against the lefty this season.
All right, Nick, let's move on over to the DK Sportsbook. What is your favorite player prop on the board?
Yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit off the main slate here. We're still, in the later games of the 6 o'clock hour, but DJ LeMahieu over 1.5 total bases going up against the Tigers. He's 9 for his last 22. He has a lot of momentum going, actually, more so than some of the other guys we've talked about. And he's done well against Erod throughout the course of his career, 8 for 23. He's another guy too, hasn't had much in the way of opportunities against left-handed pitching to start the season, but in those few opportunities that he's had them, he has done well. So I have no problem backing him going up against the Tigers, even if he doesn't get to see too much of Erod either.
All right, Gary, and where are you going for your favorite player prop?
So I'll just go back to a game we've really been talking a lot about, and a player we've talked already about. I like Carlos Correa over 1.5 total bases plus 115. I thought about going with Gio Urshela, but this kind of shows you just how odd the pricing is on DraftKings versus the DraftKings Sportsbook. Urshela over 1.5 total bases is actually a lower number. It's only plus 110, where Correa's is plus 115. So despite the fact that Correa is twice as expensive on the main slate tonight, the sportsbook looks at these two guys very similarly. So I think that says a lot. But Correa is someone who has struggled so far as a member of the Minnesota Twins, but he's got a 136 career WRC plus against left-handed pitching. This is a really good matchup for him, and I think this is going to be like his breakout game with Minnesota.
All right, Gary, and favorite run line or money line?
Yeah, I would cheat and probably take the first 5 in this game. And this line is moving, but I do like the Jays minus 130. I just don't think Nick Pavetta matches up well with this lineup. As I said, he struggles immensely at Fenway Park. And I think Jose Barrios, terrible first outing of the season, but really someone who's been the picture of consistency the last 4 seasons. He's thrown the 4th most innings in baseball in that span of time. He's got like a mid-3s ERA, a mid-3s FIP. You kind of just know what you're getting from him, where Pavetta is a little bit more of a wild card. So I'll lean with the Jays money line, but like I said, I probably prefer the first 5 where you're really just focusing on the starters and less of the bullpens.
All right, Nick, favorite run line or money line bet?
Yeah, I'm going to go to that late game tonight for this one with Mariners run line going up against the Rangers. I just look at this matchup, and it's Logan Gilbert, who has shoved in his first 2 starts, going up against Dane Dunning, who's a guy you always want to pick on in DFS and on the sportsbook as well. But also when we look at the Rangers lineup too against right-handed pitching, 569 OPS, 264 team WOBA against right-handed pitching, and then they have the MLB worst .069 ISO against right-handed pitching. We just saw Seattle too when we talk about their hitters smoke John Gray last night. I know it ended up with 6 runs. At 6 runs, I'll take that any night. I think that's going to work plenty well to cover in this one. And when you look at the bullpens too, they couldn't be on further ends of the spectrum to start the season. Seattle's bullpen ERA 2.27, their FIP 2.94. So there's a little bit of regression, but they're still going to be lights out. You look at Texas ERA 5.68, their bullpen FIP 5.79. So MLB worst in both of those categories, and it's just going to continue to be bad for them. So I have no problem backing the Mariners to cover here at minus 1.5.
All right, good stuff, guys. Appreciate the time as always. Now we're moving to football. We're going to continue our divisional breakdown of what each NFL team needs in the upcoming draft. So here's Jeff's NFC North draft needs.
What's up, guys? This is Jeff Ulrich here from DraftKings, bringing you your NFL draft preview featuring the NFC North. Let's start with the Green Bay Packers. Packers lost Davante Adams. They need wide receiver. They need wide receiver depth. They need high-end wide receivers to replace Davante Adams. Treylon Burks, George Pickens, Alex Pierce, all some of the names that are floating out there that could be attached to Green Bay. Detroit Lions, another team that could be targeting wide receiver depth, just in case DJ Chark doesn't work out necessarily. They do have the 32nd pick, as well as obviously the 2nd overall pick as well. They could target a Sky Moore or a Chris Olave there if they fall. They're ranked second. They were ranked second last in sacks per game as well. So do expect them to target Aiden Hutchinson if he's there at number 2. He would help immensely, obviously, with the pressure rate, and he'd also fit in well with the culture that Dan Campbell's building there. Potentially, the Lions may be targeting a quarterback on day 2 as well. Desmond Ridder, if he falls there, could certainly be in the cards. He looks like the most pro-ready of all the quarterbacks in the draft this year. Minnesota Vikings, they need a help in a lot of areas. Not really a team that's likely to make a splashy offensive pick as well. Already got Justin Jefferson, obviously committed to Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Cornerback, likely this team's biggest need. If former projected top pick, Kayvon Thibodeau falls, this could be a landing spot for him as well. Look for Derek Stingley if he falls to potentially be on the Minnesota Vikings radar too. Chicago Bears, another team that needs a lot of help in a lot of different areas. They don't have a first round pick though, so they could be out of luck. Looking for best value likely for the Chicago Bears in the 2nd round. They need a run stuffer to replace Khalil Mack. They need some O-line help. They did give up the most sacks overall last year in the league, and they need some wide receiver depth. Could be targeting a guy like George Pickens or Alec Pierce as well in the 2nd round if those guys fall.
What's up, everybody? You are watching The Sweat. I'm your host, Jesse Cofield, and I have the greatest NHL panel ever here. It is a RotoWire duo, Paul Bruno and AJ Schultz. Fellas, NHL morning skate time. Need your DFS and Sportsbook previews of tonight's 4-game NHL slate. So, Paul, hit me with your favorite top price play for DFS.
Well, I'm not going to take the very top guys because I want to get 2 of the higher end guys in here. So I'm going to give you 3 names and you can pick any 2 and that'll be the core of your group. So beginning with Mikko Rantanen, he gets a great matchup in Seattle tonight. $7,800 a price tag on him. 3 goals, 13 points in his last 10 games played. Playing on the big line, they should have a big night against a team that is count the days to the end of the regular season. Patrick Kane against Arizona also looks like a points night for the Chicago veteran. He's been as consistent as your clock every day. He piles up the points on a regular basis. He's got 10 in his last 10, better than a point per game on the season. He's pouring a lot of shots on goal, so I like the opportunity for him to pad those numbers against a very bad Arizona club. And finally, Jack Eichel in a game that Vegas has to have. How many times have we said that in the last 2 weeks? They're in against Washington. He only cost $7,300. He's leading the offense, though, for the Golden Knights. 42 shots on goal in his last 10 games played, and that's translated into 6 goals. He's going to need to score tonight, maybe more than once, to help them win this game.
All right, AJ, what do you think? Who do you want to spend your money on in DFS?
Well, of all the top price options, I'm actually going to look at the blue line and look at Cale Makar for $8K. I think Paul mentioned the matchup here with Seattle, and so getting Makar makes a lot of sense tonight. He's got 8 points in his last 6 games, along with 20 shots and 10 blocks. The Kraken's penalty kill is averaging just 75.4% efficiency this season. It's in the bottom 10 of the league. So this is a good opportunity to get as much of that power play for Colorado as you can. Makar is significantly more expensive than the next blue liner, Alex Pietrangelo, who comes in at just $6,400. But I think he's worth the price difference here. Paying up for Colorado, I think, is a good strategy tonight. Nazem Kadri is expected to be back in the lineup. He comes in at $6,800, another good option there as well. But I think it's a prime opportunity to pay up for your blue liner tonight.
Should have known you were going to pay up for a defenseman, AJ. It's like your thing now. It's your signature. All right.
What about my new go-to? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we like it. What about your best value play, AJ?
Well, look, if you're going to get a bunch of these Colorado guys in, you have to find value towards the bottom of the price range here. And I think TJ Oshie at $3,200 is a good spot to pick. He's set to be on that top line with Alexander Ovechkin and Evgeny Kuznetsov here. He's got 2 goals in his last 4 contests with 10 shots over that stretch. Again, you can't undersell the value you're getting when he's playing alongside Ovechkin. So 3,200 is too good of a spot to price. On the other side of that lineup, I like Chandler Stephenson for 3,500 with Vegas. He's going to get the opportunity to play with Dadonov and Pacioretty. Again, not super productive lately, but in a really good spot. So anytime you're paying 3,500 or less for a top 6 guy with good partners, I think you're looking at, fantastic value here.
All right, Paul, we need some value. Where are you looking for it?
Well, I'm looking at one of the games that should be the game of the night, maybe Dallas and Edmonton. Tyler Seguin on one side for $4,600. He's got 8 points and 38 shots on goal his last 10 games played. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's been a real key to Edmonton's offense of late, $4,200 his price tag. He's got 3 goals and 6 points in his last 10 starts. I think both these guys will figure into the scoring of what should be a very high-scoring and entertaining game. And then back to Colorado, I go for that mismatch. I look at Andrei Burakovsky playing second-line minutes, also getting looks on the power play. Should be active based on the mismatch that AJ implies with the special teams there as well. 4 goals, 11 helpers, 26 shots on goal for Burakovsky, and I think he pads those totals tonight.
All right, Paul, how about your favorite player prop on the sports book? Connor McDavid, you could get over 1.5 points here for plus 100.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, Jesse. And I'm going to say back to some of the names I mentioned earlier, too. I'm looking at Seguin and Burakovsky each to score a goal. They'll pay off at plus 250 and 215, respectively. And Ovechkin's at 48 goals. You can't tell. He's not looking for 2 goals tonight. I say he gets at least 1, and that'll pay at plus 110.
All right, AJ, where are you going for your favorite player prop?
I'm going to go to that Colorado matchup. I mentioned how Seattle's been struggling on the penalty kill. Meanwhile, Colorado has a top 5 power play. So basically, for player props, I like this entire first unit really to get a power play point. You get Makar comes in at plus 160, Rantanen at 135, McKinnon at 135. If you want to get a little bit riskier, you could look at Lehkonen at plus 290 or Nushkin at plus 260 to get a power play point. But just be careful on those last 2. One of them is likely going to get bounced for Nazem Kadri in that number 1 spot. So I would only take one of those guys and then Kadri for a power play point as well.
All right, AJ, take us home with your best puck line or money line bet.
Well, look, Paul mentioned it. We've been talking about every night seems to be a must-win game for the Golden Knights here. And Washington, meanwhile, is 7-3 in their last 10 contests. So I'll take Ovechkin in the Caps at plus 120 tonight. I think you could make a decent argument that Washington should be favored in this one. So getting plus value on the money line here to take the Caps to win this one is too good to pass up for me.
All right, Paul, where are you going?
I love that call, AJ. I'm also looking at that Dallas-Edmonton game. Like I said, we're talking about the 2 games of the night, one he covered and the one I'm talking about now. Dallas on the money line plus 145, I think, is the call. They've got a much better defensive structure, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game. Edmonton's played well of late, but I don't think that they're up for a challenge from a more structured Dallas team. And then I'm going to give people a reason to watch Chicago versus Arizona. Who else is going to care if they don't put money on this? Puck line minus 1.5 for a plus 155 payoff for the visitors tonight.
All right, good stuff, guys. Appreciate the time as always. One more break to go, one more block to go. The Sweat. We'll be right back. right, just like the Zurich Classic, we're pairing up our two all-stars, DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and RotoWire's Len Hochberg. Fellas, PGA Tour Zurich Classic, time to break it down, coming at us from New Orleans, TPC, Louisiana. So Len, different format with the team event here, right? So what's your strategy here?
Yeah, it's a completely different strategy, Jesse. Good morning to everybody. This is the hardest week all year to get 6 for 6. Only 33 guys, 33 teams, however you want to look at it. You can only pick one or the other. So it's really 33 guys, and you've got to get 6 through. It's going to be hard. Don't feel terrible if you can't. That's the first recommendation for everybody out there. This is all about chemistry. We've seen teams that combine two guys who aren't necessarily good golfers or aren't necessarily playing well. And they team up together and they just have a blast out there and they play well together. So I look for that. I think there's a lot to look at past history here. Teams that have played well before, they are something that we will look at. I will look at. And also if, that you're going to have to go low, at least on 2 of the days, on the first and third day when they play the better ball. If you can get a team that has at least one good iron player and one good putter, I think that's another good way to go.
All right, Jeff, I know you answered this yesterday, but anything to add here?
No, I mean, a lot of the same things, just course history, I think is going to factor in a lot. And just, you need short-term chemistry. And it's typically been these teams with like one sort of younger player and maybe not even a younger player, but there's some kind of veteran involved often in times in all these teams. We saw it with Billy Horschel, Scott Piercy, John Rahm, going with Ryan Palmer. Who's like somehow always gets the top 5 player in the world here. But I think that a veteran chemistry kind of thing is probably going to happen again this year.
Okay, so let's talk about the teams here. Patrick Cantlay came in second last week, falling in a playoff. He's with Xander Schauffele. They cost $10,400. Now, just behind Hovland and Morikawa at $10,700. So do you need to pay up for one of these teams, you think, Jeff?
I mean, I don't think you necessarily do have to pay up for one of them. I mean, I definitely, it's a roster construction. You can do it. As Len mentioned, I mean, it's going to be hard to get 6 of 6 through. And certainly you can go stars and scrubs because we see a lot of sort of random teams show up at this event every year as well with like top 10 finishes. I would prefer the Cantlay-Schauffele pairing for the simple fact of what we've been harping on. Course experience, course history, and just general overall experience. Both Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele have tons of team experience playing in the Ryder Cup. Cantlay's been, T11, T7 here the last 2 times he's played. These two guys combined for a nice finish last year. I believe it was T11. So there's just more going on here. They're just more used to this format. I think that in terms of explosiveness right now, Morikawa and Hovland, potentially obviously 2 of the best players in the world, but we're not talking about a big difference between Cantlay and Schauffele either. And I think with the experience factor, I would lean with the slightly older duo.
All right, Len, what do you think? Do you need to pay up for one of these teams? And if you do, which one do you like?
Yeah, I think you can and maybe even should pay up for at least one of these teams. You're not, it's going to be hard to get 6 for 6 anyway. So don't think you have to really save a lot for that 6th guy, that 6th team. But if we're talking $10,000 teams, there are a couple of others I like better. Cam Smith and Mark Leishman, the defending champion. Cam Smith has won this tournament twice in 4 years, so he obviously does well in the format and likes the format. It's all a question for me is whether Cam Smith is ready to play. He really wasn't last week. After his crushing Masters loss, he wasn't ready at Harbor Town. That's understandable. I think being back with his good buddy, his good Aussie buddy, Mark Leishman, will, revitalize him for this week. And Billy Horschel and Sam Burns, there's the veteran presence that Jeff was just talking about with Sam Burns. They were together last year for the first time. They finished 4th. Billy Horschel has won this tournament as a solo and as a team partner with Scott Piercy a few years ago. If there's a horse for the course, it's Billy Horschel.
All right, Len, move us down the board. So if there's a team price under $8K that you like here that you might be targeting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I like Brandt Snedeker and Keith Mitchell. Again, veteran and younger guy. Not that Keith Mitchell is that young, but they played together last year. They were fourth. They talked about having a great time together. Contrasting styles. Keith Mitchell, great off the tee. Really pretty good everywhere this year, actually. And Brandt Snedeker, the short game, not what it once was, but still pretty darn good. So contrasting styles that work well in this format. And all the way down at $7,100, Tyler Duncan, who was great last week on another short track, and Adam Schenk. They were Boilermakers, Purdue Boilermakers together a number of years, about a decade ago. Duncan 2 years older, but these guys have known each other forever. This is the fourth time they played this tournament together. They've had some good results, 11th last year.
All right, Jeff, team price under 8K that you're targeting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of teams. Like, I mean, I really like that Schenk Duncan team call as well by Len, but there's a lot of teams like that. And this is why I don't think you necessarily need to pay up for the top. I think a balanced approach probably going to give you a better option this week. And I like Windham Clark and Cameron Tringali. Tringali is a guy who's played extremely well, not just in the team event. He was T5 here in 2018, 2019, but also when it was a singles event too. He was in contention a couple years. So Tringali coming off, like, seemed to get his game together last week on another P-tie track. I like that. Wyndham Clark is the prototypical guy who could just get red hot at this event. He is a really, really good putter. He's big off the tee. And you pair him with a solid around the green player like Cameron Tringali. I really like this duo quite a bit. I love the fact Wyndham Clark's coming in with some confidence. 3 made cuts in a row now. He can be streaky, but again, if that putter lights up for him, I think you're going to have a really good chance of seeing those two go low. Especially, again, we got that nice pair, a younger guy and a guy with a lot of experience in Tringali. 7,800. I really like those two.
So you're talking about some balanced partners there, Jeff, but Harold Varner had a nice top 3 last week, but Bubba hasn't cracked the top 10 this season. They'll cost you $9K. Is there a pair that you might like one golfer, but then you're just like worried about his playing partner's recent play?
Yeah, and look, I really like that duo of HV3 and Bubba. And again, you have to worry about, like the course, the event history of Harold Varner, like never making the cut. But I'm not too worried about it. He's got a new partner. I think you just write that off. But there is a couple other, pairings with similar sort of, just like worries on one side. And I think the biggest one for me, the most intriguing one, is Robert McIntyre and Marty Laird. We've seen countrymen do very well at this event. The Aussies have won it. Obviously, last year we had an Australian duo and a South African duo going up in the playoff. Now we've got like a Scottish duo here. These guys obviously, share the same nationality. Something has clicked for these, nationality teams at this event. And I think that with the way Robert McIntyre is playing, which is very, very good, it's a very good young player. If you're not familiar with him, I suggest maybe go and watch some highlights. He's big off the tee. He can get really hot with the putter as well. And Marty Laird's coming off a made cut. So Laird is obviously the worry here. He can just miss every single 4-footer for the week. But if he does start to sink some putts, he hasn't been terrible tee to green. So for me, that's the most intriguing one, just because we love the upside of McIntyre, but you got to take Marty Laird with him. And that kind of makes it more of a boomer bust combo for me.
Len, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I actually like that Laird McIntyre team too. And don't dismiss Laird. Laird is really good tee to green. I mean, yeah, the 4-footers, as Jeff mentioned, that's going to be an issue. But that is another good contrasting style. A little bit pricey for me. I was a little surprised to see them that high. I guess that's Robert McIntyre building up that price. But as far as, if a guy is playing poorly coming in, it doesn't really matter to me this week. Yeah, I look at it. I think about it. But so much is different this week. Guys get re-energized playing with buddies, friends. If two teams are just not good guys and both playing poorly, but there's a lot there to have to go on for me to dismiss a team out of pocket. I think guys can just bounce back this week and have a great week.
All right, Len, finally, which team is taking home the trophy?
Yeah, it's hard. I'm looking really at a couple. Max Homa and Taylor Gooch, good buddies. They're going to have a blast out there. They played last year together for the first time. They were 17th, not great, but both are really good guys. And in terms of the really all-around game, there's not one guy who needs to drive the ball, the other guy who's the putter. But I can't get away from Billy Horschel and Sam Burns. They played together last year for the first time and did great. They're both playing great this year. Billy Horschel plays good on this course. There's just so many things so many boxes that check off for those two guys that I like Horschel and Burns to take it this year.
All right, Jeff, what do we think?
I love this Bubba Watson, Harold Varner, the third pairing. I mean, Bubba, this is a Bubba track. He's won here before. He's top 10 with two different partners in this event. And when Bubba likes courses on the PGA Tour, he just always shows up for them. He just gets in the right mentality. And Harold Varner, the third, really easygoing guy. These two were kind of in competition earlier in the season as well. I think, Bubba is the right partner for HV3 here, and I think he's going to get him on track. And Varner, again, was in contention last week. He is so close to that first PGA Tour win. I really think he's got a great shot of grabbing it this week in the team competition with Bubba.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you. That is a show. Tune in for Madden starting at noon and the slate at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Emerson, Jeff's going to be back with Reed. They're going to be talking the Zurich Classic, more golf talk for you guys. And we'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. See you then.